What is your biggest regret with Forbidden Zone?
I'm trying to think in my article, if I did it, I had, everything was ridiculed. It was a human cartoon. I probably wouldn't have had these little blackface moments in it. Just that I'd stepped on more toes than I intended. And I was raised in that community for the most part. Other than that, nothing. But even then, it was no harm intended. Everything was a cartoon. I was even accused of anti-Semitism. The Jewish money changer, Mr. Bernstein, with his extreme Jewish mannerisms, was my own grandfather, and he wasn't acting. But I was accused of anti-Semitism. You can't win and do something outrageous.
Sure. Well, I think there's a past when you can make fun of your own culture, don't you think, or no? We've gotten to a point where we can't even make fun of our own culture.
It's gone overboard. It's gone overboard, where people take offense where none was intended. And that's where I draw the line. You have to look at the intent. Are they intended, God, I did so many interviews in Buzzy, and I once interviewed Lisa Lampanelli, who's an insult comic. She insults everybody, including herself, and the audience is completely diverse. Black, white, Asian, Jew, Gentile, gay, straight, and she hits them all, and then hits herself worse than anybody, and everybody loves it.
Sure.
And to me, that's healthy.
I was watching a clip with Robin Williams. He performed in San Francisco. He's from the Bay Area, where I'm from. And just the jokes and how he was able to make fun of himself, but as well as he would poke fun at the audience and different things, different San Francisco stereotypes, which there are definitely many. Do you think that comedy and absurdity has changed?
Well, it's a little, again, artistic censorship comes in many guises, and it's always feeling self-righteous, and comedy is hurting right now. Jerry Seinfeld won't go on college campuses right now because it's too politically correct. That's where the pendulum's gone too far.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you think back to the 60s, and there was a lot of political turmoil in that time, and then for people that were teenagers in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't as much so, and now we've come into a new thing where young people are more political, which is great, but have we gotten...
I disagree. I thought they were more political in the 60s.
Okay, so you don't think there's...
It just seems like that. Just seems like that.
Right.
Yeah, it just seems like that.
Do you think they were less offended then?
Yes and no. People were offended then, they're offended now. But right now, the tiniest group that's offended kind of gets this echo chamber and a bigger effect where most people don't give a shit. I mean, that's how I see it. And it'll pass.
You think it's cyclical as well?
Yeah, and it'll be something else 20 years from now.
Interesting. So just like we were talking about the real estate cycle. And
it's already, because a lot of comedians are starting to blanch at, this is just too much.
Sure. How do you think a society becomes so sensitive to its art?
Well, it's always been, look at the Spanish Inquisition. There's always been the Red Guards in China destroying all the older art. It happens, but it's artistic censorship. That's artistic censorship. It'll always be here in one form or another.
And again, you think it's cyclical? Yeah,
or like who they're going to hit. Right now, if it's coming from the left, then it'll be coming from the right again. It goes both ways.
Well, the author Margaret Atwood, she talks about how artists and writers have always been targeted first, but also too, they're ones that can be more outspoken because most people have a day job, and so they can't tweet about certain things, but someone who's not beholden to a certain company or a boss that's watching them on social media, which I think a lot of companies do watch people, the artist has more freedom. So do you think that's maybe why artistic types are more chastised when something happens? It's because they have the ability to be more outspoken?
Probably. Also social media has changed things a lot. That anything anyone has ever done, someone can dig up and amplify it. or a small group can attack someone, and it's like, boy, they're being slammed on social media. Slammed by who? By 20 people, not by 100 million people. But it's so things are, perception is off.
Sure. And there's people that actively look for those moments.
That I'm going to be offended. What can I be offended by?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I do outrageous humor. and outrageous. So somebody's going to be outraged.
Sure. Well, back like the church lady on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
What was so funny about that was that you would see the little looks on Dana Carvey's face, over like a smallest sexual reference or whatever. And so that's what made it so funny, and it was tame at that point.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like now we've crossed a new line. But then if you drive around LA and you see some of the billboards, what I've noticed is that when the economy is doing poorly, the billboards become more risque. I don't know if that's just in my mind I'm seeing that, but I noticed that during the last recession, all the billboards that I saw were very risque. Maybe
I didn't notice that. I'll have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
By the way, I love Dana Carvey's church lady.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure it offended somebody in Kansas. There's some church ladies. So